Hi everyone, welcome back to Tallulah Talks. That is me. And it is Wednesday, so it is Killer Wednesday, where we discuss the crimes and psychology of any type of killer, not just serial killers anymore. I like to kind of discuss the psychology part because a lot of killers, as an example, the Dahmer documentary is out, so a lot of people will know that I believe he suffered brain damage, which kind of led him to not really feel much, and he had a really not so good upbringing. He was abandoned when he was a teenager, and that kind of led to him. It's an explanation for leading him to murdering people, which I absolutely do not condone, do not justify. But it is an explanation or possible explanation for why these things occurred. So today we are going to be focusing on Joanna Dennehy. So I first heard of her, I was watching a series called Britain's Darkest Taboos. I don't believe it's on anymore, but it was available on Netflix, and she was one of the individuals that they had done the documentary on. So I do have my book of stories right here to help me with my notes. I'm not sure if I should hold it up like that, and so I'm kind of always looking at the camera. I might just try that actually. So Joanna Dennehy, she was born in 1982, and it is believed she actually had a pretty good childhood. It was a very safe and loving environment for her, and she also didn't actually show any sort of problems until she was about 15 years old. And at this point, she's probably going through puberty, hormones, and also the fact our brain is still developing at that age. This is when she kind of really began to rebel, and she started misusing drugs and alcohol and began mixing with what was said as dangerous people. At 15, she began a relationship with an older man, and they actually had 2 children together. I will not be posting photos of them. They were just children at the time when all of this happened. Years passed, and her personality really began to change, and she actually began to show signs of narcissism. She then also began neglecting her children and putting her own needs first. And at this point, she also began self-harming and allowed drugs and alcohol to ruin her life. Now, with the self-harming, it's not believed she had any sort of depression. It is possible she was doing it for attention. And again, that is not to say anyone who self-harms does this. But when you have a narcissistic person, it is possible. She developed a real hatred for her mum. It's unsure why. And she pretty much just went downhill from there. When she kind of came into her adult life, she got a very distinct star tattoo on her cheek. And after spending time in juvenile detention for incidents, I think that were kind of minor, like burglary and theft, her relationships then began to fail with her children, her family, and her husband she was married to. In 2012, Dennehy was convicted for theft and underwent psychological testing. It was at this point that she was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, with psychosis also involved in that. So with antisocial personality disorder, the individuals are often impulsive and take part in criminal behaviour, which we have seen with Joanna. They are usually manipulative, reckless, and they have little care for other people's feelings. They only care about themselves. And the individuals who have this, and not saying that individuals who have this will go to commit crime, but some individuals who do suffer with antisocial personality disorder will kind of go into committing petty crimes, but their behaviour can kind of range between petty crimes to very serious crimes. In Dennehy's case, due to not having like previous trauma, it was said that her family was like a very happy, safe family, it's kind of possible that she had gotten this disorder through genetics rather than trauma. She also had underlying psychopathic traits, which also goes hand in hand with antisocial behaviour. She was put on a medication program, which helped stabilise her mood, but at some point I think she kind of just came off of that. By 2013, she had moved to Peterborough, and by March 2013, Dennehy was homeless, addicted to drugs and alcohol, and had no contact with her family at that point. Now, I am going to speak about her victims right now, just very briefly, and then later on in the video, I think it kind of came out why she chose the victims that she did. There were 3 victims that she had killed and 2 victims that actually survived. But she had actually said in previous statements that she had longed to kill, but she only wanted to kill men. And again, there is a reason for this, which I will get into later. So all victims were male and died from stab wounds, and she actually used the same knife on all of her victims. The bodies were then dumped in ditches outside Peterborough, and I believe the murders were named the Ditch Murders, or that's what they were nicknamed. And like I said, 2 other men were stabbed but survived, and they were dog walkers. Why is it always dog walkers? Like, I've just given up being a dog walker, but like, I mean, I should have feared for my life. It's always dog walkers. So one of the victims was Kevin Lee. He was a property developer, Dennehy's landlord, I believe, and he was also believed he was dating Dennehy, but Dennehy was just using him. He was killed on the 29th of March 2013, and his body was found the day after in Newborough. Dennehy had actually once, I don't know if it had occurred while he was alive, but they were dressing up, I think, so when he was alive, and dressed him in a black sequins dress, and that's how she dumped the body as well. So it kind of just shows she has no like feeling for how she left these poor men. The next victim was Lucas. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. He was a Polish immigrant, and he met Dennehy through a shared interest in alcohol and drugs. I think they were both addicts, unfortunately. She killed Lucas between the 19th and the 29th of March, and his body was found on the 3rd of April. So his body was probably gone for up to a couple of weeks at least. The third victim was John Chapman. He was her housemate, and he was killed the same day as Kevin Lee. And his body was found the same day as Lucas near Thorney. She specifically targeted men because she had stated she didn't want to kill women, especially if they had children. She didn't want to take the children's mothers away. So I guess, I mean, does that mean that she has some sort of sympathy for people? I don't know why it's like she had a hatred for men, but I'm not sure why. It never kind of said anything when I was doing my research. She stated that she stabbed men for her own entertainment. And she actually told the psychiatrist that after she had killed the first person, she actually got a real taste for it. It was also reported that she wanted to kill a total of 9 men, I think, 9 men, and she wanted to be like Bonnie and Clyde. After killing all 3 men, she had an accomplice, Gary Stretch. I'm not sure how they knew each other, but he was also known within the criminal world, and he was kind of like her getaway driver. He also helped move and bury the bodies as well, because she killed the bodies within her home, I think. She then stabbed 2 further men who were just chosen at random, and they were both dog walkers, but thankfully they both survived. After 2 days of running, Dennehy was caught after stabbing these 2 men in Hereford because they were able to describe their attacker, and because before then police didn't know who they were looking for. One of the men actually managed to make it to his home and call 999, and it was reported that a stabbing had taken place, and they described what she looked like, but also that she had the star tattoo on her face, which was quite distinctive. She was found on the footpath off of Golden Post in Hunterton, and again described as having the star tattoo on her face. You don't get many people with that. She was arrested 20 minutes away from Newman Close, and other officers ID'd and attained her associate, Gary Stretch, who they had been looking for some time. She did have other known associates who were spotted in a Renault near the scenes, and they were also taken in for questioning. Dennehy and Stretch travelled across England to reach Hereford, specifically, I guess, on the day of these stabbings. And they were also seen on CCTV, hand in hand at a market near Newborough, like that same morning. And so it was kind of during this time we also found out why she possibly chose her victims and how they came to meet her, etc. So the first one, Lucas, that was her very first victim, and again he was Polish immigrant, and he met Dennehy just around the town and loved her confidence, loved everything about her, and was made to believe that he was in a relationship with her. On the 19th of March, he received a text from Dennehy inviting him to her flat, and he was kind of thinking that this was the beginning of their relationship, and that's why he initially went. They had a drink, they had a good laugh, they were having a really good time, and at this point Joanna had kind of said, like, oh, you know, let's do this kind of game. I guess she described it as a drinking game, where she blindfolded Lucas, and at this point she grabbed a knife and stabbed him straight through the heart. And then that's when she called in her associate Gary Stretch, who then helped her move the body. The second and third victims obviously were killed on the same day. This was John Chapman, who had rented a room from Dennehy's landlord Kevin Lee in Dennehy's building. He was also a Falklands War vet, but also an alcoholic, unfortunately. And he didn't have many friends, so it's kind of like he wouldn't be missed. Not to say that in a horrible way. It is just typically, if you don't have many people you talk to, it's kind of thought that's why killers choose their victims, because they really won't be missed. On the 28th of March, Dennehy talked her way into Chapman's flat, and once kind of in the door, they drank, and while Chapman was passed out drunk, Dennehy stabbed him, I'm sure it was a total of 6 times in his neck and chest, and again she called Stretch and his associates to help her move the body. Kevin Lee was also killed on this day. Dennehy invited Kevin to her flat, and it was also kind of said that they had been lovers at one point. She also kind of came up with this game where she would dress Lee in her black sequin dress, and Lee thought this was great. He was having a fun time, and when he wasn't looking, she stabbed him in the chest, and unfortunately he died. She was then tracked down and arrested along with Gary Stretch and his other associates, but when she was arrested, she was described as being like very polite and very kind of just having this calm demeanour, which kind of baffled police. And she also was singing in the rain when she was in the police station, which kind of just left police like baffled, just like what is going on. On the 8th of May, she was charged with the murder of Kevin Lee and the attempted murders of the 2 dog walkers. On the 3rd of April 2013, however, police did find the bodies of Chapman and Lucas, but they didn't connect Joanna to these crimes. They had no reason to. So, like I said, there was no immediate link, but it wasn't long before the police actually made the connection, because like I said, the same knife was used in all 3 of the murders. And during this time, Dennehy showed no remorse, and she was reportedly smirking away and very cold. On the 21st of November, she pleaded guilty, and she went straight to the Old Bailey for sentencing. Mark Lloyd, who's one of her associates, actually testified against her, and for this he was not charged with any crime. Dennehy actually became the third woman in the history of the UK to receive a life sentence, and who was considered far too dangerous to be released back into society. And that is the story of Joanna Dennehy, and sadly her 3 victims who died and 2 of the victims who survived. If you have any stories for me regarding any sort of killer that you would like me to look into, definitely leave me some comments. And if this is the type of content you enjoy, definitely hit that subscribe button. I will be back on Saturday for Saturday's